Why, hello there, children! How you've been? By the time you're watching this video, if I manage to record, edit, and release it in a timely fashion, Assassin's Creed Shadows launch will be upon us. And I'll tell you, it was fascinating to follow the news surrounding this game for the past years. For those of you out of the loop, Assassin's Creed Shadows takes the franchise to feudal Japan, something that fans have been asking since the times audiences still thought Jack Black was funny. I mean, it's a no-brainer, really. A stealth-based game focused on uncovering conspiracies on a global level? Just set it on the land of the rising sun, make the player character be a pivotal part of the Sengoku era wars. I mean, if there was ever an idea that could print money for Ubisoft, this was it. So, obviously, when it finally came the time for them to give what the fans have been clamoring for, they decide to put samurai armor on LeBron James and have him slaughter Japanese people while hip-hop plays on the background.
Greed cannot rule this village. Not while I have breath in my lungs and a blade in my hand.
I said kill him!
Now, I've never been a fan of the Assassin's Creed series. I played 1/10 of the first game, which I found boringest, and I finished Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood based on a sense of duty towards video gaming, both titles being merely okay in my book. If the first Assassin's Creed is a slice of bread with nothing on it, its sequels are cheese sandwiches, not grilled cheese, just plain cheese with nothing else on it. Not bad, but nothing special either. That said, in normal circumstances, I would not give a fart for a new game in a franchise, even if it took place in my beloved land of the rising waifus and thematic superhero bikers. But even I couldn't turn away from the comedy of errors that the marketing of this game has been. There was the Zoro sword controversy, the Tori Gate incident, the many errors in regards to the way Japanese culture and history are being portrayed, of course. And there is the fact that the definitive, so far, release date has been set to March 20, 2025, the 30th anniversary of the tragic sarin gas attacks on the Tokyo subway. Now, I do believe that most of the dumb decisions surrounding this game were the result of sheer incompetence. If you pay any attention to social media, you realized a long time ago that hiring smart and well-adjusted people hasn't been a priority for AAA game companies for a while now. As such, these people made dumb decisions, like having Bombata as the main character of their feudal Japan-centered game. Why? First, it gives them progressive cookies. A game like this ticks all the correct boxes and becomes the little darling of all the terminally online people who will propel it to the stratosphere, giving it the kind of marketing that a company can only dream of, even if none of these crazies themselves chooses to buy it. Second, it takes attention from predatory practices, such as charging $90 for the deluxe edition of a game that will probably arrive in a very broken state if past Ubisoft releases are anything to go by. Having a black protagonist is not the problem. Cheese and crackers, we had Evelyn in Assassin's Creed Liberation and nobody cared. The problem is Ubisoft's insidious intent when doing it. There is also the fact that Yasuke kinda breaks the way the franchise works. Okay, let me explain. So, for starters, who is Yasuke? Well, nobody knows for sure. There is very little information on the guy. It is believed that he was a slave brought to Japan with Portuguese missionaries. Nobunaga Oda saw him, was impressed by his looks. I mean, a tall black man would turn heads in feudal Japan. And then he was taken as a retainer to Oda. After the death of the warlord, Yasuke was given back to the Portuguese and returned to Europe with them. Now, you might claim that actually there is historical documentation proving that Yasuke was a samurai, and that an entire book about his life his loves, and his adventures was written. And that is true. Kinda. There is a book about Yasuke, yes, written by one fella named Thomas Lockley, a British man who used to teach at Tokyo University. But his work is now widely believed to be mere fan fiction, since the guy apparently is the only source of information for everything regarding Yasuke. To be honest, the idea of a black samurai is a fascinating one, for it plays with the concept of a foreigner working hard and becoming a hero in a culture not his own. Yasuke is pretty much the modern weeb's fantasy come true, and I'm gonna be real with you. Having Yasuke as a major character in a historical fiction game, or in Assassin's Creed's case, a historical science fiction game, is not a bad idea. The major problem is, he shouldn't be the main character of Assassin's Creed. For starters, they took a guy who really existed and placed him as an assassin. Now, you may ask, why is that such a big deal? Well, the main concept behind the Assassin's Creed franchise is that the assassins operate from the shadows. They are witnesses of all of their time's greatest political events and have a hand in moving history in the direction they see most fit. But they never take center place. They always do it in a way that won't end up registered in history books. Ezio Auditore is the perfect example of it. Guy was present during all the major events of the Renaissance, rubbed elbows with Leonardo da Vinci, crossed swords with the Borgia clan, and there is absolutely no registry of his existence. You can do that with a fictional character. You can create a suspension of disbelief where the audience accepts that this major player in world events was someone who intentionally didn't want to leave a mark of his existence. Hence, we have no knowledge of him. There is this mystique of a secret history to which we are privy to every time we play an Assassin's Creed game. You can't really do that with a real historical figure now, can you?
Oh, but you said there is little information on Yasuke, so he could operate as an unknown quantity from behind the scenes, couldn't he?
Not when you know he existed for sure, unlike Altair, Ezio, or the dude from Assassin's Creed 3 that nobody cares about. Besides, Yasuke won't remain anonymous when you make him an 8 feet tall dude clad in samurai armor with the Oda clan coat of arms emblazoned in it, turning people into shish kebabs in the middle of the street during daylight. Now, the channel Skill Up has recently released a video on their impressions after playing a recent build of the game. I'll link the video in the description, but from what was said, Yasuke is pretty much samurai juggernaut, an immense dude who is nigh unstoppable, capable of destroying thick wooden doors and concrete ornaments with just a shoulder charge. His only downside is that he's too big and burly to do the series' trademark parkour with any grace, or to successfully sneak around. So, to do those things, you have to switch to Nioh. Oh right, I haven't talked about her yet. The game's second protagonist is Nioh, a kunoichi who is nimble and stealthy. You know, the things every main character in the series has been since its inception. If you ask me, Yasuke was a last-minute addition. My opinion is that the game was being developed having Nioh in mind. A petite kunoichi who needs to be furtive and clever about how she infiltrates places, but then someone decides to add Goro into the mix and ruin everything for everyone. So, is there any way we could use Yasuke as the hero of an Assassin's Creed game and make it work? Like I said before, no, I don't believe so. What should have been done instead was give Yasuke his own game. Namely, his very own version of Makai Tensho. For those who don't know, Makai Tensho, which translates to Demon Realm Reincarnation, is a historical fantasy novel by Futaro Yamada, published from December 1964 to February 1965 on the Osaka Shimbun newspaper. The story takes place during the Tokugawa shogunate, which occurred right after the Sengoku period. You know, the time of long civil war that spread throughout Japan before the country's unification. Anyways, Makai Tensho tells the story of the fated meeting between Yui Shosetsu and Mori Soiken, both historical figures that at one point rebelled against the powers above them and were promptly defeated. Shosetsu when he tried to topple the Tokugawa shogunate, and Soiken when he was slaughtered at the Shimabara rebellion. In Makai Tensho, Soiken survived and mastered the dark arts, so the two men get together, pull a deadly alliance, and fueled by their desire for revenge, use the evil powers they now possess to resurrect and control the greatest warriors and sorcerers of Japan and use them to achieve their goal. Among such warriors we can find Araki Mataemon, Miyamoto Musashi, Amakusa Shiroto Kisada, and Jubei Yagyu. Unfortunately for the two villains, Jubei Yagyu breaks free of their control and fights to defeat them before they can destroy Japan. Makai Tensho had many adaptations, including a 1981 movie called Samurai Reincarnation in the US, starred by the legendary Sony Shiba, and a short-lived direct-to-video animation released between 1996 and 1997 that was called Ninja Resurrection in the Land of the Rising Cheeseburgers, in an attempt of fooling weebs into thinking it was a sequel to Ninja Scroll. It's a great anime, by the way, one of my favorites. The soundtrack is lit, as young people say nowadays. It's like Samurai Conan the Barbarian soundtrack. It's amazing. It's awfully violent too, so be warned if you want to watch this anime. So, anyways, we can use the same concept for our game. Demons, yokai, and otherworldly entities are trying to take over Japan, and our boy Yasuke is caught in the middle of it. Now, how should the gameplay be? Well, I am not a game designer, so I won't take a lot of time describing this aspect of our little experiment here. Let's make it a hack and slash. A blend between modern Ninja Gaiden and Nioh, which I am playing right now! Well, I'm not playing it right now, you are watching pre-recorded footage, but I am playing as Yasuke! Or actually, I was playing as Yasuke when I was recording. Yes, he's playable in Nioh! Not really, he's a boss and a skin for your main character, but you know what I mean. Let's have a fast-paced, brutally difficult and horrendously violent hack and slash where Yasuke goes from a simple servant to a feudal lord to a Rolex-wearing, diamond ring-wearing, kiss-stealing, wheeling-dealing, limousine-riding, jet-flying son of a gun! Every time you destroy a demon, you get orbs, blood, souls, cucumbers, whatever it is that can be considered the essence of a yokai, and use that to level your character. Typical fanfare for the hack and slash. Also, let's give this game a cool name. Yokai Revenger. Yeah, I like that. What, you don't like? Who cares? It's my video. Yeah, and let's take its development from Ubisoft's greasy, greedy hands and give it to a company that will give this new IP the respect it deserves. What? Come on, Capcom's on fire lately. I mean, yeah, they did make some huge mistakes in the past, but they are more than compensating for them. I mean, it's been banger after banger since Resident Evil 7. Come on! People at that company deserve the medal after pulling the impossible and giving us Marvel vs. Capcom Collection. Also, if you dislike Street Fighter 6, I'm afraid we can't be friends. Good day, sir! Leave my house! And don't talk to my son ever again! On a side note, this is the character I made on World Tour mode, a cross between Mizu from Atarashi Gakko, Hayase Nagatoro, and an e-girl well into her 30s. Isn't she beautiful? Isn't she? She's great and you love her! So there. We decided on a gameplay style, a title, and a developer. Now, all there is to do is to develop a story. I used develop twice in the same sentence. Good one. Great, good one, Bear, good one. Very well. Let's make this game take place at the end of the Sengoku era, as we previously decided. Our story begins on the night of Oda Nobunaga's death, which occurred during the Honnoji incident in 21 of June 1582. Oda was home having some sake and Doritos with his bros, watching reruns of Dragon Ball Super, discussing how he was on the verge of unifying the country and how every citizen of Japan would get their own cat girl when he was finally done, when all of a sudden his castle was attacked by Mitsuhide Akechi and his forces, who staged a rebellion against his master. Taken by surprise, there was not much Oda and his few soldiers could do, so he committed seppuku with Ranmaru Mori, one of his most loyal retainers, as his second, that is, the guy who would chop off his head as soon as he cut open his belly. Mori and his followers also set fire to Oda's castle, so his remains could not be found and claimed by his enemies. As for Yasuke, let's have him at the castle, not as a samurai, but as a guard. Let's have him be big and strong and fight with a club. He tries to hold as many soldiers as he can, but his efforts are futile. In the end, he runs to Oda's chamber to warn him, only to be witness of his end. After the death of Oda, Ranmaru and Yasuke gathered torches and set the castle ablaze, escaping soon after it. The two go on separate ways and meet again 1 year later. Yasuke is living on a small cabin hidden in the mountains, so that he is not found by the Portuguese and taken back to Europe. One day, Mori visits him. Since this story is being told from Yasuke's viewpoint, he will see Nobunaga's death as a tragedy. It was a guy who took him from his abusive masters and opened his home for him, granting a more dignified life than he could ever dream of. So, of course, he is livid and would do anything to make things right. That's what Mori came to offer him. Mori explains he found a way to bring justice to those who destroy their lord's ambition and that he needs Yasuke's help for it. The big fella agrees to help, and Mori shows him an artifact, an old rusty gauntlet. Yeah, like the one in Onimusha. He explains that the gauntlet was forged by the gods and that with it he will have the strength to finish Oda's ambition, to unify Japan. First, however, he needs to deal with Mitsuhide Akechi's little band of traitors and asks Yasuke help to achieve it. Without thinking twice, Yasuke accepts it. So, the first stage shows Yasuke, Ranmaru Mori, and a platoon of unnamed soldiers attacking Mitsuhide Akechi's state, slaughtering everyone in the process. Yasuke refrains from killing women and children and lets them go, showing that he may want revenge, but he has character. By the end of this intro stage, Yasuke corners Mitsuhide Akechi and fights him, but despite his strength, our guy can't defeat his opponent, who is much more skilled in combat than he is. Moments before Yasuke is killed, Mori appears and saves him. The gauntlet in his arm trembling, he absorbs the essence of Akechi, and Mori's face contorts into an inhuman green. Yasuke asks, "What the fudge was that?" and Mori says it is the first step for them to regain what was lost. In the courtyard of the mansion, Mori's men gather all the women and children. Yasuke looks at Mori in horror as he orders all of the innocents to be killed, and he absorbs the souls of the dead into his gauntlet, which now sheds its rust and glows like gold again. Yasuke, in shock, yells at him, "What did you do?" As Mori says, "I am finishing what my lord started." He raises his fist and launches a beam of energy into the air that turns the sky purple. Mori starts a speech, claiming that Japan is an ungrateful land, full of traitors, that his lord only wanted to unify the land and was betrayed and died for it. Now is the time that the entire country suffer his fate. Foaming with rage, Yasuke grabs a sword from the ground and cuts Ranmaru's arm off. The arm with the gauntlet. He grabs it and runs away, managing to lose his pursuers after a while. Next, we see him sitting on the top of a hill, exhausted, looking at the land, purple flames ravaging the countryside, screams of terror filling the air. Japan will fall, and he played a part in it. Our hero takes a deep sigh and looks at the chopped arm at his side, still with the gauntlet in it. He grabs it, takes the gauntlet, and instinctively puts it on. His mind is taken with the thoughts of Mitsuhide Akechi, which grants him the ability to fight with a sword. He realizes that he can use the power of the artifact to beat Mori and try to remedy the horror he helped create. And so, Yasuke's journey begins. How do things proceed from here? Well, Yasuke crosses Japan and finds out that the country is being consumed by yokai and each territory is under control of a legendary warrior, all brought back from the dead. These are going to be our bosses, and every time one is defeated, Yasuke absorbs their essence and learns how to fight in their style. Just like Mega Man. So he fights Hozoin Inshun, a master of the spear, and learns how to use the spear. He fights Hanzo Hattori, legendary ninja, and learns how to use ninja weapons. From Miyamoto Musashi, he learns how to use double swords, so on and so forth. Mid-game, Yasuke meets Yagyu Jubei, here being controlled by the forces of evil, and even with all his newly acquired abilities, he is no match for the legendary warrior. When it seems that he is about to be defeated, a Kunoichi shows up, distracts Jubei with smoke bombs or some other ninja shenanigans, and takes Yasuke to a safe place. The girl, who I'll name Akane, for reasons, reveals that she's one of the few surviving members of the Yagyu clan, and that all the others were slaughtered by demons as soon as the yokai invasion started, and that she's after the responsible to put an end to it. Now, I want her to be abrasive, aggressive, and unpleasant. The typical modern girl boss character, but don't worry, she'll have an arc. Akane explains that, from what she gathered, the responsible for all this mess is Ranmarumori, to which Yasuke just looks at her with a "you don't say" look, and that he's in Edo, probably protected by 100, if not 1,000 demons. The girl was operating from the shadows, trying to gather as much information as possible to assassinate Mori when the time was right. But thanks to Yasuke being as loud as a Chris Chan on a Sonic the Hedgehog's national convention, her plans went downhill. They argue a bit, Yasuke claims he lost his master, Nobunaga, and Akane scoffs. After all, the foreigner ruined her plan because he wanted to avenge a guy who was worse than a demon? She leaves him behind, pissed off, and Yasuke wonders about her feelings on Oda. So, our hero advances in his journey, slashing, crushing, smashing, impaling, eating, drinking, doing all sorts of awful things to demons, monsters, and your mama on his way to the capital. He fights a few more historical figures in his way, such as Sakata Kintoki, Araki Mataemon, and Amakusa Shiro Tokisada, from whom he inherits the powers to use axes, poisonous weapons, and blessings, i.e. healing magic, respectively. When he finally arrives in Edo, he finds Jubei Yagyu again. They fight once more, and the result is a bit more balanced this time, with both battling to a stalemate. The balance changes when Akane appears and attacks Jubei. The swordsman quickly knocks her out and impales her. She lets out a faint, "Father, no!" before she's tossed aside, and Yasuke rushes to her to try and heal her wounds. He has to fight Jubei one more time, so let's make it a timed battle, where Yasuke has to defeat his opponent before the girl bleeds out. When our hero manages to use his healing powers on Akane, Jubei is caught in the field of it, which breaks his mind control. He sees what he has done to his daughter, has an Omni-Man moment, and rushes to Edo to confront his former master. After he leaves, Akane awakens, realizes she was healed by Yasuke, and they share a moment. She thanks him and apologizes for judging his wish to avenge Oda Nobunaga. He explains that he was one of the parts responsible for what is happening, that he helped Ranmarumori in causing the yokai invasion and is now trying to fix things. Akane asks why would he try to avenge a monster such as Oda, and Yasuke explains that he was a slave in his former land, that Oda gave him dignity and a home, that he might have been a monster to Japan, but for him, he was the closest thing he ever had to a friend. Akane sighs, gets up, and says that they should work together. She can be his eyes and ears in the land, and he can be her muscles since combat is clearly not her forte. They chuckle and she looks back at him with a tingle in her eyes. What was I talking about? Oh yeah! Yasuke goes on his journey. Eventually, after slaughtering a few more ungodly abominations, he meets with Ranmarumori, now with a new demonic arm that extends with grotesque tendrils. Tetsuo style, you know? They chat for a bit. Ranmaru calls Yasuke a gaijin dog, remembering that gaijin is considered an offensive way for the Japanese to call a foreigner. The correct way is gaikokujin. Yasuke claims that he's a foreigner. True, maybe even a dog, but he's not a traitor. Not to Nobunaga, nor to Japan, and that Ranmaru became both. They fight! Yasuke gains the upper hand eventually, but Ranmaru buffs himself and turns the tables on his opponent. Yasuke falls, but Jubei Yagyu and Akane show up and help. It becomes a four-way battle in which the trio of heroes eventually manage to deplete Ranmarumori's HP, and Yasuke prepares to deliver the final blow. But when it seems they are about to win, the real villain shows up. Yomotsugami, the goddess of the land of the dead. So, a little bit of history now. There were two primordial deities in Japan, Izanagi and Izanami, husband and wife, also brother and sister. God damn it, old world. Anyways, together they are attributed with creating the Japanese archipelago and many of the Shinto deities, such as Tsukuyomi, goddess of night, Susanoo, god of seas, and the one who slaughtered Yamata no Orochi, for the King of Fighters fans out there, and Amaterasu, goddess of sun and protagonist of Okami. When giving birth to a fourth child, Hino Kagutsuchi, god of fire, Izanami ended up dying from the severe burns caused by the baby's flames. Izanagi went to Yomi, the land of the dead, to rescue his wife. When he eventually found her, she made him promise to not look at her. But he looked anyway, just to realize his wife now looked like a mutton chop that was left too long in the fire. Horrified, Izanagi fled Yomi and blocked its entrance with a boulder. Izanami, pissed at her hubby, demanded he remove the boulder or she would slay 1,000 of his followers a day, to which he replied that 1,500 would be born to replace the ones she killed. Scorned, Izanami became Yomotsugami, goddess of the underworld and the one really behind everything here. See, in his dealings with the dark entities from beyond, Mori contacted the demon more than willing to help him bring Japan to its knees, that being Yomotsugami, and all he needed to do to have her help was to remove the boulder blocking her from exiting the land of the dead, which is what he did at the start of our story when he shot a Shinku Hadouken in the air with his magic gauntlet, an artifact that belonged to Izanagi, we learn. Hence, its capacity for releasing an old evil like his former wife into the world. Now, completely free, Yomotsugami will deliver her much-awaited vengeance upon the land her husband loved so much. Mori, arrogant and drunk with power, orders Yomotsugami to kill the infidels, but she grabs him instead and rips him in half. So, our villainess makes Edo her headquarters and recruits no less than a demonic and resurrected Oda Nobunaga to be by her side, much to Yasuke's chagrin. Yagyu Jubei attacks her, but ends up dying in the process. Before our remaining heroes can do anything, Yomotsugami vanishes with Nobunaga by her side. The final battle approaches. Yasuke bum rushes the Shogun castle, destroying everything in his path until he meets Nobunaga. He has to fight his old lord, and so he does. The Black Warrior slowly realizes that despite his feelings of loyalty towards Oda, he is now really a monster and needs to be put down. And so he does, with Nobunaga chuckling at him after being defeated and having "good form, my friend," as his parting words before his body crumbles to dust. Yasuke rushes into Yomotsugami's chambers and fights her. Typical final boss thingy, in which she has more than one phase, is frustratingly hard, and by the time you beat her you feel no satisfaction because it was more luck than skill. Yeah. After Yasuke lands the final blow, Yomotsugami starts melting into a dark, putrid paste. Akane arrives in time to see her demise, and outside of the castle, all yokai and demons are purged by the rising sunlight, ending the nightmare once and for all. The final scene takes place after another time skip, and we see Yasuke at his cabin, plowing the field behind it. He is visited by Akane. He's happy to see her alive and well, and asks how she's doing. The girl explains that she now works for the government. She finds cells of people who want to use the land's disarray to gain power, and that thanks to that, she haven't had time for herself ever since they last met. She smiles and tells him that she's happy to see him doing fine. Now an adorable waifu without any of the sour disposition she had when we first met her. Yasuke smiles back, asks if she has time for tea with an old friend. She accepts his invitation, camera pans to the blue sky, happy ending, and... Yeah. I mean, we're all thinking it, right? Yeah. And this is how I would make a game start by Yasuke. No connection to Assassin's Creed, just a new IP full of monsters, magic, and no pretense to follow real historical fact. So, what did you guys think? Hey, leave a comment, tell me, did you like it? Did you hate it? You wanna beat me up on Minecraft? Oh, and for the history buffs out there, if I made any egregious mistake in my little video, feel free to correct me, okay? Really, I mean it. Go for it. And I'll see you guys next time with another long-form dumb essay about something nobody really cares about. Yeah, until then, always remember, there are no bad ideas, only bad writers. Kisses, kisses, smooches, smooches, mwah!